Thrilled to have our fifth episode today. And is it five or six?
We're at five, I think,
Five.
already. Jeez,
Time is flying, but
it
we're
is.
fun, and that's all that matters. And we have a really cool guest that's going to be joining us in a few minutes. For those of you who haven't watched Pitch the World before, we encourage you to go to our Facebook page at Pitch the World or Pitch Investors Live. Watch some of our videos. Our videos are also captured on YouTube. So if you don't want to go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube and watch some of our videos. And you'll see that, at Pitch the World, we're here to provide value to entrepreneurs, to investors, to people in business, to people that care about mental health, even though people tend to remove mental health from business. It's actually very important. And if you've seen some of our prior episodes, you've seen that we've had, for example, in episode 1, Kevin Harrington, the original shark from Shark Tank, and the inventor of the infomercial. And he joined us and gave us some incredible insights into who he is, what he does, how he fills his day. And, if you haven't seen episode 1, I encourage you to watch that so you can get some insights from Kevin. And then in episode 2, we had the founder of Pitch Investors Live, Matthew Lawley. And for those of you who don't know about Pitch Investors Live, it's basically a Shark Tank 2.0, where you can pitch directly to an accredited investor live from your smartphone or your computer in front of a live audience. I mean, it's absolutely incredible technology, and we've seen deals done. There was actually a deal done last week, so it's real. It can happen. The barrier has been reduced in terms of getting funding for entrepreneurs. So I encourage the startup world and entrepreneurs to check out Pitch Investors Live, and also our episode 2, which had Matthew Lawley as our speaker. Episode 3, we kind of changed directions, and we went into the area of mental health. We had Dr. Lisa Herman of Synergy eTherapy, who has a comparable technology in that you can receive therapy from the comfort of your home, from anywhere, from your smartphone or your computer. And we went into just how important it is to have that therapy, and to review those options in terms of e-therapy. And then last episode 4, we had Brian Cuban. And for those of you who don't know Brian Cuban, he is Mark Cuban's brother, but he also is the writer of The Addicted Lawyer, among other books. And he shared some really incredible information just about his background, his issues with substance abuse, his issues with body dysmorphic syndrome, and really brought us into his world and shared with him some incredible insights as to the struggles that he went through, the trials and tribulations he went through, and many of which we can all resonate with on a personal level, or through our friends and family who we see not only in the legal field but in other businesses as well. So today we're going to have, in just a few minutes, we're going to have Ian Balina join us. And Drew, why don't you tell us, Ian, you've been watching him for a few years. What's your thoughts about Ian before he comes on?
Sure, and I think to touch on what you said, Adam, we've had a lot of fun with this. We've had some really cool guests. We've had some really interesting people, to where not only are they getting an idea of what we at Pitch are doing, but we're also learning how they operate on a daily basis. We're learning how they conduct business, how they got their start. And I think that's so incredibly important for anybody in today's age to really grasp, because there's really no right way or right one way of doing things. And I think with what this Pitch platform is doing for at least our guests, is providing another means in which people can connect and do business together. And that's what I love. That's my favorite part, is getting those who may not be as tech savvy into a tech savvy environment, and they begin to grow accustomed to this. So I'm not sure what you think about it, but it's been fun.
Yeah, and the guests that we have lined up in the future, I mean, we have some incredible people in many different areas, of business, of tech, blockchain, crypto, mental health. We're going to have some celebrities joining us as well, and we're just thrilled to have this platform and this opportunity to just have fun and provide value to our audience. So. We're thrilled to have Ian Balina join us in just a couple of minutes. And let me talk to you about this first, Drew. What is your take on the the way cryptocurrency is going right now, and the use of blockchain? I know you just spoke on this a couple nights ago on iHeartRadio. So what is your take on the current market?
And that's such a great question, because there's not a right answer to it. And it stresses a lot of people out, because I feel that people want a straight answer. They want a definite in stone response to what this space is. And I have to say, it's still growing, it's still developing. I think when an entrepreneur gets into the space, or an investor gets into the space, they have to really understand that it's so new and it's developing. I mean, we see, a lot of organizations have been hesitant over the years. Take J.P. Morgan Chase, for example. Its president was beyond hesitant last year about it, and look what's happened.
More than hesitant.
More than hesitant. He came out and made some really bold statements and accusations, and he later revoked those statements and actually hopped on board. And guess what Chase is doing now? They've announced and are releasing their own native coin to be used in-house, so to speak, for institutional purposes. But I think at the end of the day, if you're willing to get your hands dirty a little bit, and when I say dirty, you have to understand that it's not all going to be rainbows. It's going to take work to unwind, to understand how cryptocurrency, how digital money plays a role in today's society. And I think where you have people, whether we're talking about Ian or Brock Pierce or many of these influential figures that have taken such a high level of interest in the space, and they've used their own entrepreneurial and financial backgrounds and experience to make their own statements and pathways, it opens people up to criticism. It opens themselves up to criticism, and it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought, because unfortunately, people villainize others for their opinions, whether we're talking about this space or just the entertainment space as a whole. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be like that. We're all in this together. We're all learning what could be an entirely new financial system. Is it going to replace our fiat system? Absolutely not. But what it's providing is another mechanism in which
it's an alternative.
Absolutely.
It's there's a lot of pros and certainly there's a lot of cons. But one thing I do want to say is we're in April of 2019. We're not in 2017 anymore in terms of the ICO craze, where people were raising $30 million on these scam coins overnight, and you had all of this scamming going on. You had the wild west in terms of law, and we still kind of have the wild west in terms of the law. But it's gotten slightly better in terms of the law, but it's gotten a lot better in terms of, filtering through the scams and actually, getting a more sophisticated group of companies that actually want to make use of the technology.
Right.
Actually want to, add value in terms of, having a startup that can provide, a solution that we all need. And, I'm thrilled to personally be working with a lot of these companies, both in Florida and throughout the United States and the world. I love to be a part of tech and change, and and definitely excited about what the future holds, because there's a lot of bright people in blockchain.
Yes, there is. And, we're seeing the SEC take more of an active stance in this. And for those that feel that the SEC is the big bad wolf in this, that couldn't be farther from the truth. And if anything, this past week's news and last week's news clarified that and demonstrated that. Last week, the SEC issued its first, quote, no action letter for a private airline company that was selling tokens for the mere purpose of helping their customers book flights on private airlines. And this no action letter basically says, guys, keep doing what you're doing for that very purpose, and we're not going to interfere with you, and we're not going to take any enforcement action, because what you're doing isn't a security. You are fine. Continue doing it. Now,
I think that took a lot of guts to pursue the no action angle, because I've had a lot of clients come to me and they say, should we do the no action angle here? With our securities lawyer at our firm, and there's risk to that, because you may not get the no action letter. You may get, hey, thanks for bringing your company to our attention. We're going to proceed with our enforcement action now. So you could be putting the SEC on notice of an improper raise. So there's risk to that. So I do encourage companies to consider that as an option. It's not the only option, but to certainly look into that to see if it makes sense. And as time goes on, hopefully we get more guidance. There's talk about the Token Taxonomy Act, having new life in terms of the legislature. So perhaps we get some guidance there on a federal level, which would be great. And as time goes on, we'll see what happens at the state level, and if more and more cases come out, those are all ways for us to learn as lawyers, and for us lawyers to be able to guide our clients in this space.
And this can be fun for everyone if it's done right. The SEC is just trying to make sure that investors and consumers don't get screwed. That's all it is. And it's unfortunate. It's going to take a lot more of these individual use cases to say and further clarify what is a security and what is not. I mean, we're building, not we, but the SEC is essentially lending a trail to the courts to build case law for this.
Right. Yeah. So I look forward to seeing what Ian has to say about this. I mean, for those of you who don't know Ian Balina, he's just an incredible social media influencer, blockchain investor, advisor, evangelist, built 3 businesses from the ground up, began his career, I think, at IBM, or at least we'll talk to him about that. So he does have some corporate level experience that, I look forward to diving into with him. But for the ICO mania that was going on in 2017 and parts of 2018, he was as big of an influencer as anybody. So here he is.
Here he is.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. We understand you're in New York and you just left the conference, so thank you for taking some time with us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being on.
Well, we're glad to have you here. And for those who don't know, and Ian, correct me if I'm leaving anything out, because your portfolio is beyond impressive. So for those watching or who may be watching later on, Ian Balina is a renowned blockchain investor, entrepreneur, advisor. He's built multiple $1 million businesses from the ground up. And I believe he started with IBM, or was with IBM for quite some time. He definitely is no stranger to Wall Street. And, you can read about him on the Wall Street Journal and Forbes, all over the internet. And I think what he has to offer to entrepreneurs in general and those in the financial space, you can't get that from a textbook. So Ian, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being on.
Thank you. Well, let's start off with this. Was I accurate in saying you started off with IBM, or was that just a one in your career?
So I worked 4 years at IBM, 3 years as a sales engineer, covering IBM Watson Analytics, IBM Analytics brand. Then my last year, I was working as a sales executive for open source analytics. So 4 years at IBM was a great part of my career. Prior to that, I was working at Deloitte, but I was there short-lived, working as an IT consultant. Realized consulting wasn't really for me. I wanted something that was different, so I ended up changing over to being a sales engineer.
Okay. What can you tell us from your experience in each of these companies? Because I think the companies that you've been a part of, and definitely the projects that you've been a part of with IBM's Watson and AI, and even for a short time with Deloitte. I mean, what can you take away? What have you taken away from each of these ventures that you use today, so to speak?
So in IBM, I learned training, right? So I worked 4 years at IBM, but when IBM hires you, recent college hires, whether from graduate school like me or undergrad, they don't just put you out there in the field in front of a customer. They invested money and resources for 1 year training to make sure I was ready to work with Fortune 500 companies before putting me out there in the field. So to me, when I joined IBM, at first I was like, 1 year of training? That sounds insane.
Right.
But after that 1 year of training, I learned so much about sales with large companies to a point where I don't think I could have gained that experience going to an MBA school, right? Because this was a world-class company putting a ton of resources and money and capital to make sure their workforce and sales force was prepared to go talk to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, whether CEO, whether the CTO, basically executives, making sure they were prepared and ready to sell and close IBM deals. Right. So to me, that was very, very big for me. Also, just seeing how a world-class company operates, right? Because they're world-class for a reason. You don't become an IBM being in business for over 100 years without doing something right.
Right.
Right. So being able to learn the system and the processes in place to make sure that no matter how many different variables are at play, they still operate and function at a world-class level.
Sure.
And there's a lot that can be said about that. I mean, think about how much there is in terms of lack of training in corporate America in general. I mean, you're literally, Drew and I are both lawyers. I mean, you're literally putting people out there with no training in many instances, and you're expecting high level results from them. So I think we just lost Ian for a second, but you know, one thing that I always thought about during law school is, in unlike doctors who require residency before they can actually become full-time physicians, lawyers, they're really just thrown out there,
Yep.
and they don't have that 1 year of residency. So just wanted to emphasize that point with Ian, because I think it's incredible what IBM was doing with him there.
Oh, and I mean they're so far into the blockchain space. It's not even funny. I mean they've been at it for years, as Ryan had mentioned in the comments. IBM's been working really hard. They are very gung ho about it, and now they're just starting to really publicize and broadcast the vast potentials it offers. And I think with this type of technology, people are starting to want to understand it, want to explore what it can do for them, for their industry, for their particular role in a company. And, we're in an age of automation. Why waste so many man hours when you could condense, so to speak, the difficulties and stresses of a job?
And I think soon people aren't going to have a choice in terms of learning and adapting to blockchain. I think it's literally going to be Internet 2.0, and we hear that over and over. But where it's going to be in just about every corporation, it's going to be in every system, it's going to be part of our day-to-day lives. It's just a matter of time. I mean, we see it slowly, creeping through business right now, and the major players are all implementing it as we speak. So in my opinion, it's just a matter of time when we'll all have to be comfortable with it. So I'm glad that we could be sort of ahead of the curve and have, enthusiasts and specialists kind of, guide our audience and guide the public through blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure if we scared Ian away. I hope we didn't scare Ian away. But
we were just getting started, Ian. Come on back.
oh, jeez. You know, I
There
think.
it is.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry, guys. I was having issues with my connection.
We were scared that we were that we scared you away really early on. That usually doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm back.
Awesome.
So I was just saying. I mean, I learned a lot from seeing how they run their system, in a manner where no matter how many variables are at play, it can still operate at a world-class level.
Sure. And you know, from there on, I mean, did you see yourself being where you are today? I mean, when you were in school, what did you want to do? Where did you see yourself?
That's a great question.
I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I always saw myself as an entrepreneur from my early days. Since I would say 7th grade, 8th grade, I read books because I was really into video games, and I learned how to program, wanted to make my own games.
Oh, cool.
And I learned so much about technology and computers from reading books, PC magazines. I first began with PC gaming magazines, then programming magazines, computer magazines, learning how to build my own computers, then programming, and then just reading stories about Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Michael Dell, how he began Dell Computing from his dorm room at Texas. So all these different stories inspired me very early on to be an entrepreneur. And so I've always known that. And I think almost everything I've done in my life has kind of been with that early seed of wanting to be an entrepreneur. And always knowing, okay, yes, I'm doing this in school, but I'm not really trying to be an employee per se. I want to go down the entrepreneurial path. So that began very, very early on.
Do you think it's easy to be an entrepreneur today than maybe what it used to be, let's say 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Or do you think it's difficult?
Yeah, I think it's so much easier. I mean, because there's so many resources now. Because even though I'm still young, I still recall when the internet wasn't as big as it is now, before social media, right? Because I recall learning how to create websites when I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I was creating them using Microsoft Front Page.
I remember Front Page.
Yeah, and back then, I think it was Front Page 98 or 97 or 2000. I was learning how to build sites on. And back then, just making something dynamic was innovative, something that wasn't static, right? And then nowadays, anybody can just go onto a website and on Squarespace or whatever, make their own website. Nowadays, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, social media, right? So many different innovative things have happened around technology and being an entrepreneur that where people really now can build platforms and communities and followings much easier than before.
Absolutely.
Right? Like even right now, right? The software we're using to live stream to an audience anywhere in the world. Imagine trying to do that 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Gosh, you know,
and it's easy too. That's
Yeah.
It is. You know, I remember when I wanted to start learning how to build a web page, not a website, a web page, because there was a difference. I went to the bookstore. I got one of those dummy books on how to build a web page. You would think by following those instructions that it would have been done correctly. Still found a way to botch it up. I still have that book, and it's just, you know, it says a lot about how far technology has come, and sometimes we expect too much, I think, for what it is. We don't really take the time to appreciate where we are, how far we've come, and really the benefits that, like you said, even the software that we're using right now provides to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so moving to the next topic, you have a book out, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So before I was involved in the blockchain space, I was working as an entrepreneur with an app called Pure Hustle, and the idea was to create a marketplace, a mobile marketplace for freelancers. So we're doing the app, and we were trying to just really evangelize the app and the space. So we created a book, right, called The Complete Freelancing Guide for Freelancers. So this is for somebody who wanted to go out there, create a second source of income as a freelancer, and we just shared our experiences working as a freelancer. So I used to have a video production company. It was a great side hustle. Also freelanced as a software developer. So just sharing my experiences, what I've learned via that book. And this was a self-published book, so to me, it was also a way to learn how to really get my content out there in book form, right? Because so many people have been bloggers, but ask themselves, hey, how can I create a physical book, a book that somebody can go out there and actually use?
So is that the time where you began to shift from, being employee at IBM to beginning to hone in on some of that entrepreneurial spirit that you have inside you?
Yes, I would say yes and no. So even before IBM, I was very entrepreneurial. In college, I began a startup called Leximo, which was a multilingual social dictionary. Me and a friend of mine launched that, and we're running that for about 2 or 3 years. So even back then, I was very, very entrepreneurial. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I would say I've had so many failures, but each failure has helped me do
Learning
better. Yeah,
experiences.
each failure has helped me do better in my next venture. So, because people say, hey, Ian, how did you become so big in the blockchain space so quickly? What they don't realize is that because I wasn't starting fresh at this, I had so many past experiences that helped me really build a brand for myself with a personal brand and a company brand, a corporate brand very quickly, right? So to me, experience is the best teacher.
Right, right. So let's dive into that in terms of your shift into blockchain and cryptocurrency, and sort of what you're known for today. What intrigued you initially about cryptocurrency?
I was working at IBM. IBM was heavily involved in the blockchain space with Hyperledger.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine reach out to me wanting to learn more about what IBM was doing in the blockchain space, and he knew more about Bitcoin than I did, right? Because all I knew was Bitcoin was something that was for the dark web, right?
Right.
For bad purposes. He told me he was basically investing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and to me that just dumbfounded me. As somebody who was an entrepreneur and also an active investor via the regular stock market, I said, you can invest in Bitcoin, right? So that got me really intrigued. And I've always been a straight shooter. So I asked him, hey, how much money are you making? And he told me he was making 200% just holding Bitcoin and Ethereum over the course of a year.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
said, that beats the 20% I'm getting in a stock market. So to me, after that, that was a no-brainer. I had to learn more about this whole Bitcoin crypto stuff.
Right.
And when he told me he was launching a crypto fund at the age of 27, I didn't really know anybody running a hedge fund at that age. So to me, I was just totally fascinated by it. Began learning more about the space. That same week, I joined Coinbase, went there, bought my first fractional piece of a Bitcoin and Ethereum, just to say I had something, because I knew if I bought something, I'll be more invested in it, and I'll want to learn more about it.
Right.
So
And
from
what was the
there,
price at the time?
Bitcoin was going between 850 and 900.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it was like 875. Ethereum was around $9.
Oh,
So I mean, I thought I was late back then, but even then I was still
We're
early.
all still very early. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. But you got it much earlier than me.
I could have had all my debts paid, Ian. Had I just taken it a little more seriously at the time, I'd be worry free.
Yeah, I mean, so I got involved around then, went on Amazon, got the best books I could find on the space, Digital Gold
Hmm.
by I think Nathaniel Popper,
Yeah.
something like that. He's a New York Times writer. The other book was The Age of Cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
Read those two books. Those two books made me a believer. They gave me a good history on the space, made me say, okay, you know what, this is something I want to be involved in. This is the future. Began going to conferences. Went to a conference in New York around May 2017. That was called Token Summit. It was my first time meeting real people in the space live in person. And I said, these aren't crazy people. These are educated, working professionals, smart people who are really building smart things,
Hmm.
right? So that made me more confident because I knew it wasn't just the dark web, right? So that made me go all in even more.
Why do you think it has such a negative connotation? And what I mean by that is, Bitcoin, the term itself, I think after Silk Road happened, it really, unfortunately, took on a negative connotation as a whole, when in reality, it really isn't an illegal coin or a technology. Why do you think cryptocurrency as a whole just has this negative vibe to it, in your opinion?
I would say, I mean, from the early adopters, there were people who were, I mean, without really trying to judge anybody, I would say they were of questionable character. I mean, one of the first things that kind of made blew Bitcoin up was Silk Road,
Right.
and that got shut down by the FBI, right? Because it was illegal. It was a marketplace for illegal goods. So I think that definitely did put a hamper or kind of make people question the motives. And then the initial adopters as well were also anarchists, people who wanted to overthrow the government. So I think when you kind of have those two communities as the initial adopters, it made everybody else question it. And you also have to kind of take in mind that most people are not early adopters, right? The early adopters are typically the crazy people, which is actually a good thing, right? Because you have to be crazy to innovate, kind of like how Steve Jobs says, right? It's the crazy people that change the world.
Sure.
But by the time the laggards come in and kind of come on board, by then it's still for the crazy people. They kind of go into something else. So I think the initial people who came in were very, very, very crazy in a good way, but also crazy for people who weren't early adopters and saw that, okay, initially it was being used for questionable things, right? But now the space is kind of getting bigger, it's evolving, being cleaned up as well. Now there's more regulation coming in with different governments coming in and applying different models to regulate cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin itself. So now it's being taken more seriously. Now we have big companies coming in. We have Facebook, JP Morgan, Samsung, all getting involved in the space, giving it more credibility. So we have these big companies, although centralized, giving it more credibility.
Sure. So speaking of crazy people, tell me about the first time you heard the term ICO and what it meant to you at that time.
First time was in those books, right? Digital Gold, Age of Cryptocurrency, but I didn't really know much about it then. Then I went to Token Summit at that conference, and they had ICO pitch competitions.
Oh, okay.
And these were basically the next Bitcoin to me. So I was really fascinated because at that conference, I met my first crypto millionaires in person. And I asked all of them how they made the money, and they said from the Ethereum ICO, from the MadeSafe ICO, they're all saying ICO. So to me, it looked like ICO was the way to go. So I thought this was my ticket out of the corporate world and just basically crypto retirement, I call it. So I went out there after the conference. I learned more about ICO's initial coin offerings, which for those who don't know, it's similar to a crowdfunding, kind of like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, except people, or in this case, users are giving their Bitcoin or Ethereum or a stable coin in exchange for a token, which gives them access to that product or service and that platform, right? So it's definitely a very innovative fundraising model. In 2018, ICOs raised over $7.8 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
In 2017, they raised $6 billion. 2018, $7.8 billion. And it was very innovative at that time, right? ICOs raised more money blockchain companies raised more funds via ICOs than via venture capital in 2017, right? Because now anybody out there who had an idea could skip the middleman, in this case being the venture capitalists, and go to the entire world and the community and have them support the idea and their vision.
And I think when you have influential figures, I think we lost Ian again, but that's okay. I think if you have certain influential figures in the space that take it upon themselves to say, you know what, Adam, you know what?
Do you hear me, guys?
We can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
No, you're okay.
I'm on the phone.
So what I was saying is, I think as a nice transition, when you have figures such as yourself or Brock Pierce or Mark Cuban or a lot of these big names that are starting to express their interest publicly, at least, with this technology, with this space, it drives a lot of people your way and towards the space. A lot of people who often don't understand what digital currency is, what a cryptocurrency is, what blockchain is. Then you have people blurring terms and thinking crypto and blockchain are the same.
Right.
How, in your opinion, without getting too into details of things, how does being a public figure, how does being somebody who's been established in what they do affect how you approach this space as a whole? Because it does welcome controversy, and there's a lot of people have faced it. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, the space is definitely still growing, right? It's still evolving, very young, uh, different from other spaces. It comes with good things and bad things, right? It has pros and cons. Pros because you have people who normally you wouldn't come across in life that you end up meeting, and they end up becoming the best friends, the best business partners, right? But then, for those people who also come from a particular way of doing things, whether in the corporate world, coming in here and having people who are kind of different, right? Whether rebellious or anarchists, right? It's a diverse set of individuals coming together
Sure.
under a few different ethos or values or principles, right? Whether it's to really decentralize the way of finance, decentralize the way of working together via communities, right? But I feel like it's definitely something that you have to kind of tread carefully as you're getting into the space, right? So me, I've dealt with both the good and the bad, right? Because crypto, some people call this the wild, wild west. And in some ways, I do see that, right? Because everybody is trailblazing new ventures, new paths, new opportunities, and in some places we don't really have guidance. So how do you deal with that, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, a founder, just somebody here as a service provider, how do you deal with all these different new territories with no laws in some cases, right? How do you handle yourself, and in what manner?
Sure. And if you see a cat or a kitten, I actually have my own crypto kitty in the background for this episode.
That's a real life crypto kitty.
It is a real life crypto kitty, in case anybody was curious.
Nice.
No, I think that point is well taken. And I think, again, people are very uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, with not knowing everything. And I repeat this every time we have this conversation, or I have it with people, is this whole space is uncomfortable because none of it's really settled. We're not talking blockchain technology. We're talking digital.
Volatile too. I mean, it's the crypto market is just so volatile, and it's gotten slightly better, but I mean, what you're saying, Drew, makes total sense. I mean, it's uncomfortable. At one point, you're thinking, wow, this is going great. Like, look at all of this green, and in terms of going up in value. The next day, you see all red, and you're like, oh my god, I lost all my money. What it was? It's the volatility. I mean, you got to get comfortable with that, and you got to have a goal with it too. Like if you're going to invest in it, like you would invest in the stock market, you got to have goals, and you can't look at it every day. It'll drive you crazy, if you look at coin market cap and things like that every day. But I wanted to tie that into the next topic, which is sort of, the future of cryptocurrency and where you see it. Do you see it like anytime soon being used at the Starbucks where you're not paying with cash anymore and things like that? You're only paying in crypto. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still far away from that. But speaking of that, Starbucks is an investor in backed futures and that company. So I feel like Starbucks is getting involved in crypto. But I feel like most people right now in cryptocurrency they don't want to use their crypto. I mean, I know many people who have Bitcoin or other crypto, they're more of hodlers. They just like to hold and store. It's a store of value. Nobody wants to use it to buy pizza, for example, right? Because there's a famous example where somebody used Bitcoin to buy pizza, and now that's
that was the first purchase with Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, the first purchase was bought with pizza, right. And now that's the most expensive pizza in history. Yep. So nobody wants to really use Bitcoin for small purchases, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of it. But I feel now there are different ways with stablecoins and other more stable currencies that aren't really used for speculation, right? So I feel like maybe a few years we could see people start to use it. I myself personally have used crypto. I have a BitPay debit card, which is basically like a prepaid card. I can put on my Bitcoin or Ether. Bitcoin on it, cash it out to dollars, and go to anywhere Visa is accepted and use it. So it definitely is available, but last time I honestly used my BedPay card was probably 1 year ago, and I carry that in my wallet every day with me.
That's it's with you. You know, it's not a day goes by that you don't think about it. It's with
Yeah,
you. And I think
yeah.
you know, with the news, it's in the news all the time. So I think that's great. Um, what would your advice be to um, let's go back to kind of well, let's stay with crypto and then I'll change it back to entrepreneurship for newbies coming into the space, the crypto space. What are your tips? What would your advice be if somebody's saying, my friends are talking about it, it's in the news, I want to try it, I want to get involved. How would you do this? What would your tips be to that person?
I would say first educate yourself about the space. Don't just jump in blindly. Those
How?
two
How would
books,
you educate yourself?
I mentioned are a great start. Digital Gold and the Age of Cryptocurrency. Um, just start reading updates and the news on cryptocurrency space from Cointelegraph, CoinDesk. Just understand the terminology, the people in the space, the factors, what's influencing what, different regions. From there, I will actually, as you're doing that, own a piece of cryptocurrency because I feel like that makes you more invested. So it doesn't matter how much you have, but only spend what you're willing to lose.
Right.
Right. So get a small piece of Bitcoin, small piece of Ethereum, or some other cryptocurrency, so you know how to buy and sell it. You know how to use it. So I feel like as you get involved, as you get more invested from a time perspective, as you invest more time into it, you start to learn more about the space and get more engaged and more curious and excited and passionate about it until eventually you turn into a crypto evangelist.
No, that's great, and I think it's helpful because I would love to, and I think we talked. Adam, remind me if I'm wrong. I forget who our guest was. It might have been Kevin, but I would love to know what a finance class today would be like in college, a finance 101 class of how money works, how money is transmitted, because I think it would be very different. I don't understand. I really would be curious to see how it would be taught moving forward because I think this is part of it. I think the technology, the as you said, the terms, understanding that this is a new type of investment, not your traditional investment where you're sinking your life savings in, but it's definitely risk. But I think it's a type of finance that people need to understand, even at a basic educational level. So that's
Yeah, absolutely.
that's my thoughts. But I guess to flip the question, from an entrepreneurial level, you know, you said since seventh grade you've wanted to be your own boss, you wanted to be your own creator. How can you be an entrepreneur in today's world with social media and for the average person who doesn't want to sit at a cubicle, what can they do? How do you get started?
Oh, that's tough. I would say take action. Most people have so many ideas, but don't act on it. I mean, I've met so many people who said they had the idea for creating Uber. I mean, everybody had the idea for making Uber. Uber had the best execution, and they took action.
Right.
So I would say whatever idea you have, take action. Don't be afraid to fail. Right? Take that first step. Then once you take that first step, you start to get positive momentum and keep on going. Right? So yeah, take massive action. So as you're taking massive action, you start to learn more. So for me, even before I quit IBM, right, because I was there for 4 years, I had probably three or four different entrepreneurial ventures on my weekends on the side while I was working at IBM. Once I had something take off, then I left. Right. So don't just quit your day job. Start something on the side. As that kind of starts to take off, maybe it starts making more money than your day job. Then you can maybe pivot and start doing that. Multitask, basically.
So pivot, don't leave. Don't high and dry, get up and leave.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
good.
yeah, definitely make sure you have that safety net.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. I mean, you don't want to abandon a good thing, a money flowing situation to something that is risky and you just don't know what's going to happen with it. I think you have to have some idea of how you're going to make money in your next venture.
Yeah.
And you need to start seeing the fruits of that before you make the jump. And that's what it sounds like I'm hearing from you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
What do
that's
you
I think.
want?
Yeah,
What
go
do
ahead.
you want people our age to know? We're millennials. If you could tell Adam and I something right now, something that grinds your gears or rubs you the wrong way, what would you want us to do differently? What would you want us to share with our colleagues, our friends about anything we've talked about today?
To do it differently. Wow.
I know I'm throwing you a curveball.
Um,
Sorry.
I mean, kind of the same thing, right? I mean, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, take action. But I would say, yeah, I'm trying to see
He's going to disappear.
what hasn't been said.
His screen's going to disappear, and he's going to leave us out. Remember that uncomfortable thing at the end?
I mean, my phone is about to die, but I have enough time to get
We're
this out.
Sure.
I mean, actually, I would say making money is easy. Once you figure out the formula, making money is easy. And I feel the best thing to do to make money initially is not to focus on the money. I know this has been said many times, but focus on the community and what you're building, right? So me, before I really built my large platform, this was something I think put out by Tim Ferriss and somebody else about building a tribe, getting those 1,000 people who love you. If you can get 1,000 people who love you, you will have a career for the rest of your life. Meaning 1,000 people who will pay you money for what you do. Right? So with me, people who know I have a platform, I have a YouTube following, over 100,000 subscribers on Twitter and Telegram and all that stuff. But before I got there, I focused on building that 1,000 core people who loved me and were willing to pay me for my services, right? And to get there, it took me about 2,500 or 3,000 people in terms of my community size. And out of that size, so the way I did that is I have a YouTube channel. I launched that channel. At this point, I probably had maybe 5 or 10,000. I would say 10,000 subscribers, 5 to 10,000 subscribers. Those people wanted somewhere to reach me privately, so I created a Telegram group. That began with 50 people, then to 500, then 1,000, then to 3,000 people in that Telegram group. It's kind of like a Facebook group, basically, right? So imagine you have a YouTube channel, which then from that community, you bring, let's say out of those 5 or 10,000, you create a channel or a Facebook group and have 500 to 1,000 people. Then that grows to 3,000 people. Then that got too big, and just by listening to my community, they'll tell me the next thing to do. They'll basically guide me along the way. They're basically my GPS. They told me, hey, this group is too big. We're willing to pay you for a private group for a more intimate place. So I created a paid mastermind group, and that was based on their feedback. And initially, I didn't like the idea, but I noticed that after a while, my churn with the community was kind of starting to increase because the group was too big. They wanted something at a smaller scale, and they were creating their own groups, but those groups weren't really going as well as they would like. So they would come back to me and complain to me about that. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm tired of this complaints. Let me create this paid group. I created that, and I launched this via Patreon on Patreon.com. When I launched it, in less than 4 hours, it sold out. And in less than 4 hours, I was basically getting 60 grand a month from Patreon.
Wow.
When I launched. And that just dumbfounded me because that came from just 10,000 people and then that smaller group. But initially, I was putting out so much value that people saw the value and they were willing to pay for it.
Sure.
And the way I put out that value was I looked at the market and said, okay, I'm brand new at this, brand new in the whole crypto blockchain space. What can I do that's different? Where is that gap in the market? And I noticed that most people making videos online or content online weren't really credible. They weren't really telling you about themselves. They weren't really making themselves personable. They were hiding behind avatars, behind different names, nicknames, whatever, handles. I came out there, told you, hey, my name is Ian Balina. I work at IBM. This is my role. This is what I do. You know where to find me if you want to find me.
Yep.
Right. This is my story. This is what I've done in my life that I think makes me kind of credible to talk about this or do this about entrepreneurship, freelancing, what have you. And then I noticed people were doing short videos on YouTube. Nobody was doing any long form content.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that as a gap. Most people would say, okay, nobody's doing long form content because nobody wants to listen to or watch any long videos.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
even the YouTube algorithm tells you make short videos. I said no. I'm just gonna do long videos, offer as much value as possible. I'm heavily inspired by Gary Vee, right? Gary Vee says, "Speak your truth, document the process." So I just put out long form videos. I would do live streams because I hated to edit videos. Editing videos took so long, and I had so many different things I'm doing with IBM, my side hustles. I had no time to edit videos, so I said, "Let's do it live, one take it or leave it." I began doing 2 live streams a week, 2 to 3 hours long, and for some reason people loved them because nobody else was doing live streams at the time, and it was raw. Like I couldn't really
That's exactly
prepare
it.
for a
That's
live stream,
exactly it.
right?
It's
It was right
raw.
there.
It's
It was
raw
the truth,
footage. Yeah.
And that's what
right?
we're doing with this. Is you know what, we haven't rehearsed this. We tell you ahead of time. Here's kind of the topics we're going to go through, but we just talk, and I think that's how you connect with people. Because if you come off scripted or rehearsed, it just doesn't come off as genuine. It doesn't. It's not believable, and then you lose your audience.
Authenticity to
Yeah,
it too. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think what you're saying is absolutely tremendous advice to our audience, which is, to build a following, get people 1,000 tribe members at least, to buy into what your message is, to buy into the value that you're providing, and to be real and genuine, because people can tell the difference between someone who's being real and someone who's being fake, especially when you're live and you're giving the raw footage like you were describing. So I think if you're tuning in now or you're tuning in after the fact, because Ian, we have a lot of people that watch this after the live broadcast, I think you should really listen into what Ian just said about how he built his following, and sort of all the avenues that he's taken to provide value to his audience. And he's not just taking in money; he's actually providing content, and it's valuable for a lot of people. So we really appreciate that. I think that's tremendous advice. And the last thing we like to do on this show is if there's any questions from the audience, if you have another minute or so to just take a question. If not, you can
Yes,
answer
yeah,
them later.
yeah. I'll
Uh,
take one question.
okay, one question.
Oh, and that's a good one by our very own.
That's a question I get a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you whether you want to answer that. None of this is considered financial advice. We're both lawyers, so
Yeah.
we
or
use
legal advice.
yes, or legal advice. So up to you whether you want to answer that.
Okay, so which cryptocurrency has the biggest potential to overtake Bitcoin? I'm not really a betting man, but if I had to pick something besides Bitcoin, I feel like I'll give you five. I mean, right? So right now, obviously, Ethereum is the next biggest one, right? So Ethereum has lots and lots of potential. Not to say it's going to overtake Bitcoin, but it has the potential to do that.
Sure.
Then the next one, I would say Binance. BNB has really made lots of strides. I feel like similar to the dot-com era, boom and bust, where the bubble popped, you had a few companies stay standing: Microsoft, Amazon, eBay. Right? I feel like with the ICO boom and bust, Binance seems to be the one that's staying standing. Right? Although they may have regulation issues down the road, but for now, Binance it's been more stable than Bitcoin. If you go back to the all-time high, I think Binance is 30% away from its all-time high last time I checked, and it from a USD perspective, and in BTC, it actually passed its all-time high versus BTC, even in this bear market. So Binance is definitely up there.
So
Outside of
hold on. I just put my life savings into BNB. So
You know what? CZ would be so happy to hear you saying that, Ian.
no, I'm joking. I'm joking. Obviously, what Ian said before, put enough money that you're willing to lose. I think that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. So those two are definitely up there, I think.
Well, that's and
Okay.
we thank you for that. And Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure. We know you're a busy man, and we are very grateful for your time. We're glad that we had a chance to meet you, and we'd love to have you back in the future and keep us updated on things.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Take care,
joining us. Really
guys.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a
To the
wonderful
moon and beyond.
To the moon and